Asan? Daniel?
Good morning, Ma'am Daisy, Sir Jaylor. Good morning.
Morning po.
Kumusta po kayo?
Ito po, nalulungkot po sa stress.
Parehas tayo. Gusto. Kaya yan, kaya natin yan, kaya. Papunta na si papunta na si Manny para makatulong, may dagdag na gamit po.
Noted.
Auschwitz.
Noted po.
The Russian style. Auschwitz. The Russian style.
Practice.
Auschwitz.
Auschwitz.
Auschwitz. Russian style. Concentration camp.
Parang hindi nakaano yung pwede pa center ay yung ano pala tablet ang hindi na
Ang tayo, pwede bang tayo na lang mag-adjust para...
ano ba? Ano? Sabihin mo lang ang gagawin ko. Atras ba kami?
Okay na sir, nakaupo na tayo. Sir,
Okay.
Happy ka na sir.
Okay. Half lang naman ano. Tapos kailangan din namin ng ano sa screen para makita namin kung nasa frame na kami.
Gagamitin yung big screen.
Magsasalang na daw kami. Tubig na lang kasama sa training. Para ano.
Sir, mag-breakfast mo kami sa sila ma'am. Sige, mag-breakfast mo namin. Oo.
Mag-breakfast.
Oo, sige.
Sasalang na ata.
Hindi pa tayo mag-drive.
Hindi pa
Para
ba?
sandali pa daw.
Nag-set up pa ba?
Halika po na, breakfast
Sige.
namin.
Baka sumaya kami sa
May energy. Happy ano nandito na sa base ka sa akin. Para makikita yung audio, pumwede yung ano. Para mapasang
Sound check, sound. Cue po sound check. Sound, mic testing 1. Sound check. Alongside the millions of. Hello, sound check, mic testing 1, 2. Sound check. Mic test 1. Sound check. Hello, sound check. May ano. Sound check. Who suffered in other genocides. In the Philippines, this day began at the Philippine-Israel Friendship Marker at Quezon City Memorial Circle. Mr. Lee Blumensal and Deputy Chief of Mission of Israel. The Holocaust had threatened the world's civilization, and we must never forget what has happened. As the great philosopher George Santayana had claimed, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. Learning from the past, we must honor those who survived and become united to create safer future. Ladies and gentlemen, two great nations are joining hands for the international.
Sound check. 1, 2, 3. Sound check.
Hindi, gumagana pa rin naman. Mic, check.
Sound check. May ano? Sound check. Hello, sound check. Mic test. Sound. Sound test 1. Sound. Sound check. Mic test. Sound. Sound check. Hello, sound. Hello, sound check. Mic test. Sound. Sound check. Sound. Okay na. Okay. Okay, sound check. Ito.
Ika-play ko yung prompt.
Holocaust Remembrance Day, an international day commemorated every 27th of January. During the Holocaust, alongside the millions of people suffered in genocides in the Philippines, this day began at Philippine-Israel Friendship Marker at Quezon City Circle. A short candle lighting ceremony. Here's a short clip. The Holocaust had threatened the world's civilization, and we must never forget what has happened. As the great philosopher George Santayana claimed, those who cannot remember the past are doomed to repeat it. Thus, we must remember the lives of those who perish, honor the survived, and become united and create a safer future. Ladies and gentlemen, today, two great nations joining hands for International Holocaust Day. The symposium is presented by the Department of Education and the Schools Division Office of Quezon City, and in partnership with the Embassy of Israel. Friends, join us as we hold a virtual symposium commemoration of the International Commemoration of the Holocaust Victims. Before we begin our program, we request everyone to join us solemnly for those who perished during the Holocaust. A peaceful day to everyone. We would like to inform you that the program is composed of 2 parts. The first part will be ceremony, and the second part, you are joining us today. To give us his welcome remarks, let us welcome the Department of Education Regional Director of the National Capital Region and the Undersecretary for the Bureau of Human Resource Organizational Development, Dr. Wilfredo E. Cabral. Thank you very much, Dr. Wilfredo E. Cabral. Now to give us is His Excellency. Thank you very much, Ambassador Ilan Fuse. Our endeavor in fulfilling the mission to disseminate information about the Holocaust is significantly important. Let us now listen to a message to the United Secretary General. Our program today is being live streamed international for us to be more informed about the Holocaust. We'll be showing our younger viewers to understand Holocaust. Let us watch this. Thank you very much, Secretary Teodoro Locsin Jr. To give us a clear picture of, and first-hand information on what Holocaust is, let us listen to a testimonial. Excellency Ambassador Anke Raifoncel. This will be immediately followed by another testimonial from a Jewish refugee who came from the Philippines. Thank you very much, Ambassador Anke Raifoncel and Yusek Tonesito MC Umali, Esquire, to further deepen our commemoration on the victims. She secretly wrote poems and songs about camp life while her patients slept. Weber. Thank you very much. One of the highlights of today's event is a candle lighting ceremony and prayer. We will be lighting 6 candles representing the 6 million Jews who perished during the Holocaust. To light the first candle, may we invite our Deputy Secretary, Leonor Magdolis Briones, to light the candle. May we request our United Nations for the 4th candle. May we call on His Excellency Ambassador Ilan Fuse. May we call on His Excellency to light the 6th candle. And last candle, may we call on the Executive Director of the Jewish Association, Mr. Lee Blumenthal. May this candle be comfort of the soul. To lead us in the prayer, may we call on Mr. Moshe Alkobi from the Jewish Association of the Philippines. In view of the commemoration,
Ito problem to. Huwag kayo maglalagay ng ganito kalaking TV sa studio. Dapat ang TV lang, maliit, ang monitor.
pwede kaya yun, yun na lang kaya.
Ganyan, halimbawa, yun yung monitor ng computer. Pwede yun kasi Ang kinakalabasan niyan, parang yan lang ikausap niya yung nasa yung mga ganyan po. Pero pagka ganito kasi, pagka pranter niyo ganito kalaki, ang view ng host dyan, ganun din kalaki.
Pero ito na may prompter.
Nakagano kayo eh.
Kaya nagganito.
Set mo yung camera niyo.
Thank you very much,
Sir, what about
Secretary
yung
Lenore
problem?
Bantoles.
Kasi nakita ko yung sa division of San Pablo City, malaki yung kanilang prompter.
Okay lang naman yun.
Ano, sir?
Pero ang concern ko lang yung kasi, pag yung sobrang laki ng prompter mo, yung basa ng mata ng
Sinusundan.
Kaya okay din yung ganyan lang.
okay lang sa akin.
Okay, may
Oo.
tablet.
Parang sa TV nga din eh. Kaya
Kasi pagka
friends,
ikaw ang
as we
host,
end the first
pag
part.
nakalaki TV mo, babasahin mo siya sa laki. Gaganon ka.
Umiikot yung mata.
Ito, steady ka lang.
Then we must first of all not forget.
Kami nga sir, ginagamit lang namin siya.
Kasi sa amin din. Kasi minsan kami, laptop, tapos tablet, ano lang, screen lang ng monitor. Okay.
Picture proper. Thank you, Reno High School. Balik lang.
Yan. Okay tayo. Pati audio.
Ano sir, pwede tayo magkaan?
Yes. Pwede na.
Meron pa tayo sa laptop, pagkaganda eh.
Who suffer and others in the Philippines. This day began at the Philippine-Israel Friendship Mark at the Quezon City Memorial Circle. Memorial at the Quezon City Memorial Circle. Quezon City Mayor Joey Belmont, Executive Director of the Jewish Association of the Philippines, Mr. Lee Blumenthal, and Deputy Chief of Mission of the Israeli Embassy, and Deputy Chief of Mission of the Israeli Embassy, and Deputy Chief of Mission of the Israeli Embassy, Mr. Nir Balzan, gathered for a short lighting candle, candlelight ceremony. There is a short. In the Philippines, this day began at the Philippine-Israel Friendship Marker at the Quezon City Memorial Circle. Quezon City Mayor Joy Belmonte, Executive Director of the Jewish Association of the Philippines, Mr. Lee Blumenthal, and Deputy Chief of the Mission of the Israeli Embassy, Mr. Nir Balzan, gathered for a short candlelighting ceremony. Here is a short. Ladies and gentlemen, today, two great nations, ladies and gentlemen, Today, two great nations are joining hands for the International Holocaust Remembrance Day. This symposium is presented by the Department of Education, Republic of the Philippines, through its External Partnerships Service, in cooperation with DepEd National Capital Region and the Schools Division Office of Education. Before we begin our program, may we request everyone to join us as we solemnly offer a minute of silence for those who perished during the Holocaust. Peaceful day to everyone. We would like to inform you that our program is composed of two parts. The first part will be the Holocaust ceremony. The second part will be a lecture proper and will unravel the history of Holocaust. We would like to express our gratitude to all of you who are joining us today. Thank you very much, Undersecretary Wilfredo E. Cabral. As we have mentioned earlier, today we are commemorating the victims of the Holocaust. Now, to give us the remembrance statement, let us welcome the Israeli Ambassador to the Philippines, His Excellency Ambassador Ilan Flus. We would like to thank the Office of the UN Resident Coordinator in the Philippines for providing us the message of the United Nations Secretary General. Our program today is being live streamed internationally. For us to be more informed about the Holocaust, we will be showing a short video for our younger viewers to understand the Holocaust and its impact today. We will be showing a short video for our younger viewers to understand the Holocaust and its impact today. Let us watch it. Thank you very much, Secretary Teodoro L. Oxin Jr. You give us a clearer picture and first-hand information of what Holocaust is. Let us listen to a testimonial by a Holocaust survivor from Eastern Europe. Is to be read to us by the German ambassador to the Philippines, His Excellency Ambassador Anke Reifenstuhl. His Excellency Ambassador Anke Reifenstuhl. His Excellency Ambassador Anke Reifenstuhl. Thank you very much, Ambassador Anke Reifenstuhl and Undersecretary Teresita M.C. Ubali, Esquire. To further deepen our commemoration of the victims of the Holocaust, may we listen to a lullaby by Ilse Weber, as performed by Professor Amit Wiener and Gabby Rubin. Ilse Weber worked as a night nurse in the children's ward at the
Sound. Sound.
Theresienstadt, German.
Theresienstadt.
Theresienstadt, German.
Hirap ano yun. Stop.
Theresienstadt, German.
Stop.
Theresienstadt.
Theresienstadt, German.
Theresienstadt. Ilse Weber worked as a night nurse in the children's ward of the Theresienstadt concentration camp. She secretly wrote poems and songs about camp life while her patients slept. Weber, a Czech Jew, also sang her young charges to sleep with the lullaby she wrote while playing the guitar. She perished in Auschwitz in 1944. Auschwitz, Auschwitz, Auschwitz. The Russian stop. The Russian stop. Auschwitz. Auschwitz, 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 Auschwitz. The Russian stop. The Russian stop. The Russian stop.
Auschwitz.
Auschwitz, Auschwitz, Auschwitz. Auschwitz. She perished in Auschwitz, Auschwitz, Auschwitz. She perished in Auschwitz in 1944. May we listen to a lullaby by Ilse Weber as performed by Professor Amit Wiener and Yankee Rubin. Ilse Weber worked as a night nurse in the children's ward of the Theresienstadt concentration camp. She secretly wrote poems and songs about camp life while her patients slept. While her patients slept. About camp life while her patients slept. She secretly wrote poems and songs about camp life while her patients slept. Weber, a Czech Jew, also sang her young charges to sleep with the lullaby she wrote while playing the guitar. She perished in Auschwitz in 1944. Auschwitz. In Auschwitz. She perished in Auschwitz in 1944. To further deepen our commemoration of the victims of the Holocaust, may we listen to a lullaby by Ilse Weber, as performed by Professor Amit Wiener and Yankee Rubin. Ilse Weber worked as a night nurse in the children's ward of the Theresienstadt concentration camp. She secretly wrote poems and songs about camp life while her patients slept. Weber, a Czech Jew, also sang her young charges to sleep with the lullaby she wrote while playing the guitar. She perished in Auschwitz in 1944. In Auschwitz in 1944. In Auschwitz in 1944. Auschwitz. Auschwitz. To light the first candle, may we call on the Deadbed Secretary, Honorable Leonor Magdolis Briones. May we call on our United Nations Resident Coordinator, Mr. Gustavo Gonzalez, for the lighting of the third candle. May we call on His Excellency Ambassador Anker Reifenstuhl of the fifth candle. May these candles comfort the souls of those who perished, the hearts of their families, and continuously remind us to protect, promote, and value dignity and justice. To lead us in the prayer, may we call Mr. Mosh Al-Qudi from the Jewish Association of the Philippines. Thank you very much, Secretary Leonor Magdolis Briones, in support to our endeavor of empowering our fellow men. It is indeed an honor for us to have a Holocaust survivor to give her life testimony. Ladies and gentlemen, may we call on Holocaust survivor, Ms. Lena Quinn. Thank you very much, Ms. Rina Quinn. Ms. Rina Quinn, for sharing with us the first-hand experiences during the time of the Holocaust. We deeply appreciate and we will forever remember, and we will remember forever. And we will forever remember the sacrifices and heroism. We will remember forever the sacrifices and heroism of the victims. Again, from the bottom of our hearts, thank you very much, Ms. Rina. Now, before we proceed to the second part of our program, let's have an intermission number prepared by Quirino High School Greek Club from the school's division office of Quezon. To convey to us the statement of purpose, let us once again have Deputy Undersecretary Tonesito MC Bali Esquire. Thank you very much, Dr. Rene Escalante. After over 80 years, we would like to present one of the most extraordinary humanitarian stories on the eve of the World War II, which centers around the Philippines. One of the most extraordinary humanitarian stories on the eve of World War II, which centers around the Philippines. This is the open door policy. It is created and installed by then President Abel Alfred. This policy resulted to the rescue of 1,300 Jewish from the Holocaust. From the inspiring film, let us unravel the story behind Holocaust, how it began, who were involved, and how Philippines played a major role in rescuing Jewish refugees. Our first lecturer will discuss the topic on remembering the victims of the Holocaust through a tour in the Yad Vashem Museum. Thank you very much, Dr. David Deutsch. In relation to our first topic, our next discussion will focus on the initiative of the Philippines to rescue the Jewish refugees, entitled Drawing Inspiration from the Initiatives of former President Manuel L. Quezon in Helping Holocaust Victims. Thank you very much, Professor Xiao Chua. Indeed, the history reflects the Philippines' deep commitment to attain a world that adheres to humanity and equality, regardless of race, culture, beliefs, and country. If you have some questions in mind, kindly type them in our chat box. Our team will be collating your questions in a while for our panelists to answer. And to lead the facilitation, may we call on the moderator of the talk show, the Project Development Officer from the External Partnerships Service. We present to you Mr. Wally V. Soriano. We now present to you. Let us now turn it over to Mr. Wally V. Soriano. Let us now turn it over to Mr. Wally V. Soriano. Friends, everything has to come to an end. As we end today's event, let us treasure this capping moment of our commitment to preserve memory, dignity, and justice. To wrap up today's momentous event, may we call on for his closing remarks the Undersecretary and Chief of Staff of the Department of Education, Attorney Nepomuceno A. Maladuan. We present to you Attorney Nepomuceno A. Maladuan. Let us now turn it over to Mr. Wally V. Soriano. Before we proceed to the final audiovisual presentation, we would like to sincerely express our deepest gratitude to all of the martyrs. We would like to express our sincerest gratitude. We would like to sincerely express our deepest gratitude to all of the martyrs and heroes of the Holocaust. And to all of you who joined us today, who joined hands with us today, to all of you who joined hands with us today in the International Holocaust Remembrance Day. We say thank you to the State of Israel and to the Republic of the Philippines. This is Jailor Fahar. This is Jailor G. Fahar.
Ano ang detail yung ano?
Hindi naman gamitin niya, sir, no? Hindi naman gamitin niya. Ay, gamit siya. Gagamitin niya tayo. Gamit siya.
Sila kaya doon sa kabila, sila.
Make up time.
Pa lang yan ha. Ini-straight lang yan.
Plancha pa lang.
Plancha pa lang yan.
Holocaust Remembrance Day, an international day commemorated every 27th day of January to encourage remembrance of the 6 million Jews annihilated during the Holocaust, alongside the millions of people who suffered in other genocides. In the Philippines, this day began at the Philippine-Israel Friendship Marker at the Quezon City Memorial Circle. Quezon City Mayor Joy Belmonte, Executive Director of the Jewish Association of the Philippines, Mr. Lee Blumenthal, and Deputy Chief of Mission of the Israeli Embassy, Mr. Nir Balzam, gathered for a short candle lighting ceremony. Here is a short clip.
The Holocaust had threatened the world's civilization, and we must never forget what has happened. As the great philosopher George Santayana had claimed, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. Thus, we must remain vigilant. Learning from our past, we must remember the lives of those who perished, honor those who survived, and become united to create a safer future.
Ladies and gentlemen, today, two great nations are joining hands for the International Holocaust Remembrance Day. This symposium is presented by the Department of Education, Republic of the Philippines, through its External Partnerships Service, in cooperation with DepEd National Capital Region and the Schools Division Office of Quezon City.
And in partnership with the Embassy of Israel. Friends, join us as we hold the virtual symposium on the commemoration of the victims of the Holocaust in connection with the International Holocaust Remembrance Day.
Before we begin our program, may we request everyone to join us as we solemnly offer a minute of silence for those who perished during the Holocaust.
respect and spirit of nationalism by singing the Philippine national anthem to be followed by the national anthem of the State of Israel.
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
A peaceful day to everyone. We would like to inform you that our program is composed of two parts. The first part will be the Holocaust ceremony, and the second part will be a lecture proper that will unravel the history of Holocaust. We would like to express our gratitude to all of you who are joining us today.
To give us his welcome remarks, let us welcome the Department of Education Regional Director of the National Capital Region and Officer in charge of the Office of the Undersecretary for Human Resource and Organizational Development. Ladies and gentlemen, Undersecretary Wilfredo E. Cabral.
To His Excellency Ilan Flos and representatives from Israel Embassy, United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres, Secretary Leonor Magtolis Briones, and colleagues from the Department of Education, NHCP Chairman Rene Escalante, and to all speakers, panelists, professors, and guests, a meaningful afternoon to everyone. Today, we are honoring the 6 million Jewish victims of the Holocaust and the millions other victims of Nazism. This virtual symposium on the commemoration of the victims of the Holocaust is set on this day, January 27, the anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau, which is designated by the UN General Assembly as the International Holocaust Remembrance Day. The three words in this year's theme, guiding the UN Holocaust Remembrance and Education, memory, dignity, and justice, must be taken to heart. Holocaust commemoration and education is imperative in the 21st century. Contemporary distortion of history and anti-Semitism as a form of racism must be prevented if we are to prevent future genocide and promote human rights. We believe that education has a key role of instilling the importance of never forgetting history's lessons, particularly lessons from the brutality and impact of the Holocaust. As we encourage the symbolic act of remembering, we further ensure that history will never repeat itself. I am reminded of Nobel laureate and Holocaust survivor Elie Wiesel, who stressed the importance of memory to prevent historical revisionism and the atrocities during the Holocaust. Memory moves us toward solidarity with those who still suffer. Today's symposium is among our educational activities that serve as an avenue to express solidarity to all Holocaust survivors and their continuous reclaiming of rights, history, cultural heritage, traditions, and dignity. We are celebrating the resilience and triumph against all odds, encouraging interventions to protect human rights and championing compassion and empathy to counter hatred and violence. Moreover, beyond mere remembering, it is also important to remind everyone to not be silent witnesses to forms of injustice and violence. As what we shall wrote, the opposite of love is not hate, but indifference. Today's Holocaust ceremony and lecture proper aim to show the significance of maintaining vigilance against the deliberately inhuman annihilation of a large group of people and the danger of an ethnicity's culture and identity ceasing to exist. It is our hope that this event will counter indifference and silence and instead cultivate solidarity in the fight against all forms of violations on human rights. Again, we welcome everyone's presence and engagement in this virtual symposium. Good afternoon, and thank you very much.
Secretary General, His Excellency Antonio Guterres.
Today, we remember the 6 million Jewish men, women, and children who perished in the Holocaust, and also the Roma and Sinti, and the countless other victims of its unprecedented horror and calculated cruelty. The Holocaust defined the United Nations. Our very name was coined to describe the alliance fighting the Nazi regime and its allies. Our charter was drafted in San Francisco as the Dachau concentration camp was liberated. The United Nations must always be on the front line of the fight against anti-Semitism and all other forms of religious bigotry and racism. Today, we witness an alarming resurgence of xenophobia and hate. Anti-Semitism, the oldest and most persistent form of prejudice, is rising yet again. Attempts to downplay or downright deny the Holocaust are proliferating. No society is immune to irrationality or intolerance. We must never forget that the Holocaust could have been prevented. The desperate pleas of the victims fell on deaf ears. Too few spoke out, too few listened, fewer still stood up in solidarity. Remembering the past is crucial to safeguarding the future. Silence in the face of hatred is complicity. Today, let us commit to never be indifferent to the suffering of others and never forget what happened or let it be forgotten by others. Let us pledge to always be vigilant and uphold human rights and dignity for all. Thank you.
We would like to thank the Office of the UN Resident Coordinator in the Philippines for providing us the message of the United Nations Secretary General. Our program today is being live streamed internationally. For us to be more informed about the Holocaust, we will be showing a short video for our younger viewers to understand the Holocaust and its impact today. Let us watch this.
Not so long ago, millions of people were convinced or coerced to help systematically murder 6 million innocent men, women, and children. How could this happen? How could so many people turn so bad? These are profound questions. There are no easy answers. But we do know that many methods that enabled this unprecedented mass genocide, known as the Holocaust, are being practiced today. To understand this, let's take a step back. In 1914 through 1918, the war to end all wars was fought. In this Great War, now known as World War I, Germany was defeated. Thereafter, the country struggled to pay reparations, overcome the ramifications of the Great Depression, high unemployment, and political instability. In this turbulent period, the Nazi Party and its leader, Adolf Hitler, rose to power by promoting extreme nationalism and fanning the flames of hatred, particularly against a German minority population, the Jews. Many German people enthusiastically embraced this message of hate and the promise of a renewed, powerful country. In the 1932 elections, the Nazi Party became the largest group in the German parliament. And through a negotiated political deal, Adolf Hitler became the Chancellor of Germany in 1933. Through a combination of oppressive laws and by practicing domestic terrorism, the Nazis were able to solidify their power. During this period, political opponents were jailed, the press was stifled, and Jews were vilified and humiliated. In 1938, on a night called Kristallnacht, 267 synagogues and more than 7,000 Jewish businesses and homes were looted or destroyed. 30,000 Jewish men were arrested, and more than 100 Jews were murdered. While this was not an era of social media, it was an era of fake news and aggressive propaganda. The Nazis deployed cutting-edge marketing and communication techniques. They were masterful in branding their form of hatred, using film as it had never been used before, posting aggressive, targeted messages, characterizing Jews as demons and monsters. With a population primed to hate, things got worse. Jews and other individuals deemed unworthy of life by the Nazis were confined to ghettos and then carted on sealed freight trains across German-occupied Europe to extermination camps. Families were separated. The old and sick were generally the first to die. Younger and stronger people were thrust into forced labor. People were starved to death in the freezing temperatures, or died from disease, or were murdered in mass in gas chambers. The death camps accounted for approximately half of the 6 million Jews that were killed. Other Jews were slaughtered in mass executions, random shootings, on the streets, in their homes, in synagogues, ghettos, and more. In total, 1/3 of the world's Jewish population and 2/3 of Europe's Jewish population were slaughtered. In addition, the Nazis also murdered millions of other enemies and people they deemed undesirable, including Poles, the Roma, the incurably sick, Soviet POWs, political opponents, and gay men. In the end, millions of Germans, as well as individuals from other countries, were ultimately responsible for the largest genocide in human history. So how did this happen? The demonization of a minority population, false propaganda, domestic terrorism, the acceptance of hate speech, and the co-opting of the press are all hugely impactful. The Nazis proved that seemingly normal people can be convinced and coerced to commit the worst atrocities imaginable.
May we now listen to another message from the Department of Foreign Affairs. Let us all welcome the Secretary of the Department of Foreign Affairs, Honorable Teodoro L. Locsin, Jr.
I am honored to join all of you in this solemn commemoration of humankind's darkest hour. We're here to remember the victims, the 6 million Jews murdered during a time of unprecedented, horrifying, and abject cruelty, such as no prior or subsequent act of barbarism can ever come close to matching. Although both before and after, it is repeatedly tried, but never on this scale, and with this deliberate purpose. It was bad enough to want to erase a race, but to do it as it was done, meticulously planned, in cold blood, and with sweeping, all-inclusive efficiency. And it spared no one, regardless of age. It took particular relish in killing children, infants. Today is also the anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau. That liberation matched in the opposite sense of compassionate purpose the horror it ended. The Allies knew that nothing good and plenty bad was happening in the death camps. But it took actual liberation to show in mass graves filled to the brim and the open doors of cold ovens surrounded by curious gray mounds of ash. The unspeakable acts of people who continue to have admirers throughout the world. So it is only right, nay more, it is the decent thing for the global community to commemorate the International Holocaust Remembrance Day on this day when it ended for a while. We all have a deep responsibility to remember the Holocaust and hold firm to the commitment never again, although it happens again and again, but never on the same staggering scale dark design, and unspeakable relished cruelty. My country is anchored on the conviction that we shall not stand by when something is done to others that we would not have done to ourselves. The manner of this one still boggles the horrified imagination. At the time of the Holocaust, it meant doing the decent thing and implementing an open doors policy to take in the Jews fleeing systematic abuse, heralding their imminent extinction. That decent thing we did was unmatched. Indeed, it was resisted by other countries in the world. There was no political incentive to do this, especially for a small country as ours in the Pacific. Indeed, there was scant authority for us to do it. We were not yet an independent state, but a dependency of a foreign power. It was just the sense of decency that moved Filipinos, which is to say, the sense of humanity we expect as much from ourselves as from others. The rescue of the Jews speaks to a Philippine tradition of never turning away a stranger, of offering protection, especially to those most vulnerable to hurt and in most desperate need of protection. And we give it without fail. I will not mention the occasions that span the century up to the present. The refuge we gave to Jews fleeing the Holocaust is a defining moment in our friendship with the Jews. We shall always stand by Israel against any declared purpose or hint of another attempt to repeat its extermination by the bare-faced lying denial that it ever happened. Because what happened exceeds any other despicable prejudice based on race, religion, or politics. Holocaust denial is tantamount to a declared purpose of state to make it happen again to the Jews. I will not dilute that message by invoking other horrors before and after it. Terrible as they were, in Kampuchea, in Rwanda, they won't bear iconic comparison. Jewish tradition has it that a person dies twice. The first time when his or her heart stops beating, and then again, the last time their name is said. For in a name's utterance, one thing of the dead and gone at least survives into the present, the names by which they were called in life by those who loved them. And as they were not to be called again on the way to their deaths, because their names had been substituted with serial numbers. No, let us seek out the mocking registries of death. The last time their names were checked off against the list. Let us say their names again and keep saying their names. For the sound of it at least survives into the future they and their possible posterity were denied. Their murderers killed more than the Jews. They starved to death, sickened, shot, and gassed. So let us say their names, not in the collective as Jews, but the names of each one of them, and keep saying them, one after the other. We owe this as much to our sense of humanity as we owe it to them.
Thank you very much, Secretary Teodoro L. Locsin Jr. To give us a clearer picture and first-hand information of what Holocaust is, let us listen to a testimonial by a Holocaust survivor from Eastern Europe. This will be read to us by the German ambassador to the Philippines, His Excellency, Ambassador Anke Reifenstugel.
This will be immediately followed by another testimonial from a Jewish refugee who came to Philippines, which will be conveyed to us by the Department of Education, Undersecretary for Legislative Affairs, External Partnerships and Project Management Service, Undersecretary Tonesito MC Umali, Esquire.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Anke Reifenstuhl and Undersecretary Tunesito MC Ubali Esquire. To further deepen our commemoration on the victims of the Holocaust, may we listen to a lullaby by Ilse Weber as performed by Professor Amit Wiener and Jackie Rubin. Ilse Weber, a night children's ward of the Theresienstadt. She worked as a night nurse in the children's ward of the Theresienstadt concentration camp. She secretly wrote poems and songs about camp life while her patients slept. Weber, a Czech Jew, also sang her young charges to sleep with the lullaby she wrote while playing the guitar. She perished in Auschwitz in 1944.
Thank you very much. One of the highlights of today's event is the candle lighting ceremony and prayer. We will be lighting 6 candles representing the 6 million Jews.
Alas dos pa man.
on the DepEd Secretary, Honorable Leonor Magtolis Briones.
For the second candle, may we call on a Acting Secretary, Ms. Ma Teresa Lazaro.
May we call on our United Nations Resident Coordinator, Mr. Gustavo Gonzalez, for the lighting of the third candle.
For the fourth candle, may we call on His Excellency Ambassador Ilan Flus.
May we call on His Excellency Ambassador Anke Riefenstuhl for the lighting of the fifth candle.
To light the sixth and last candle, may we call on the Executive Director of the Jewish Association of the Philippines, Mr. Lee Blumenthal.
May these candles comfort the souls of those who perished and the hearts of their families, and continuously remind us to protect, promote, and value memory, dignity, and justice. To lead us in the prayer, may we call on Mr. Mosh Alkabi from the Jewish Association of the Philippines.
We will say Ashkava. Ana Adonai מלא רחמים, אשר בידך נפש כל חי ורוח כל בשר איש. יהי נא לרצון לפניך תורתנו ותפילתנו בעבור נשמותיהם של מאות ריבו מישראל, נער וזקן, אנשים ונשים וטף, שנהרגו על קידוש השם, שנשחטו, שנחנקו ונשרפו לעפר על ידי הצוררים הגרמנים יימח שמם, ביניהם ארזי הלבנון ואדירי התורה, קדושים וטורים, ראשי ישיבות ותלמידיהם, תינוקות ישראל שלא טעמו טעם חטא, וצדיקי עולם, קהילות הקודש, שמסרו נפשם על קדושת השם. יזכרם אלוהינו לטובה עם שאר צדיקי עולם, וינקום נקמת דם עבדיך השפוך, ככתוב בתורת משה איש האלוהים, הרנינו גויים עמו, כי דם עבדיו יקום, ונקם ישיב לצריו, וכיפר אדמתו עמו. תהי נשמתם צרורה בצרור החיים, להחיותם בתחיית המתים עם כל מתי עמך ישראל ברחמים, ושלח לנו משיח צדקנו במהרה בימינו, אמן.
In view of this commemoration, may we now listen to our keynote speaker. She is the incumbent Minister of Education of the Philippines and Professor Emeritus of the University of the Philippines, National College of Public Administration and Governance. Her academic and professional competencies range from business administration, accounting, public finance, public policy, and administration. She was the Secretary to the Commission and Audit and served as Treasurer of the Philippines. Furthermore, she is an articulate advocate on economic and social development issues. She was a former president of Freedom from Debt Coalition, lead convener of Social Watch Philippines, and coordinator of Social Watch Asia and Social Watch International. She combines the roles of distinguished academic and teacher, public official, and social activist. Ladies and gentlemen, our keynote speaker, the Secretary of the Department of Education, Republic of the Philippines. Please welcome the Honorable Secretary Leonor Magtolis Briones.
Thank you very much, Secretary Leonor Magtolis Briones. In support to our endeavor of empowering our fellow men, it is indeed an honor for us to have a Holocaust survivor to give her live testimonial. Ladies and gentlemen, may we call on Holocaust survivor, Miss Rena Quinn. Thank you very much, Miss Rena Quinn, for sharing with us your first-hand experiences during the time of the Holocaust. We deeply appreciate and we will remember forever the sacrifices and heroism of the victims. Again, from the bottom of our hearts, thank you, Miss Rena Quinn.
Friends, as we end the first part of our program, allow us to share a great insight from Professor Ben Zion Dinner, and I quote, "If we wish to live and to bequeath life to our offspring, if we believe that we are to pave the way to the future, then we must first of all not forget."
And now, before we proceed to the second part of our program, let us have an intermission number prepared by Quirino High School Glee Club from the school's division office of Quezon City.
Il Signore mi rende uno strumento della vostra pace.
Lord, make me an instrument of your peace.
Dio, lasciarlo seminare l'amore.
Where there is hatred, let me sow love.
Ferviscia ferita, perdono, ferviscia duria, ferviscia espressione.
Thank you, Quirino High School Glee Club. And now, we have reached the second part of our symposium. From the Holocaust ceremony, we shall now proceed to the lecture proper.
To convey to us the statement of purpose, let us once again have DepEd Undersecretary Tonesito MC Umali, Esquire.
Thank you very much, Undersecretary Tonesito Umali, Esquire. To give us an inspirational message, may we call on the chairperson of the National Historical Commission of the Philippines, Dr. Rene R. Escalante.
Good morning to everyone. On behalf of the National Historical Commission of the Philippines, I express solidarity with the Jews around the world in commemorating the International Holocaust Remembrance Day. During the Second World War, around 6 million Jews were killed by Nazi Germany and its collaborators throughout Europe. It is one of the largest instances of mass murder in human history. We remember the tragedy, the violent riots, the segregation into ghettos, the mass shootings, and the gas chambers. These terrible things occurred because many people believed that others were inferior to themselves and were therefore worthy of extermination.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rene Escalante. After over 80 years, we would like to present one of the most extraordinary humanitarian stories on the eve of World War II, which centers around the Philippines. This is the open door policy initiated and installed by then President Manuel L. Quezon. This policy resulted to the rescue of 1,300 Jewish from the Holocaust.
To understand open door policy better, may we invite everyone to watch a movie prepared by the Embassy of Israel entitled Open Door, Open Heart.
From the early 1930s, the dark shadows of Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party had begun creeping all over Europe. Racial supremacy and Hitler's megalomania ushered in the darkest period in human history. For millions of Jews, time had begun to run out. The Jewish population faced a growing threat and brutal treatment from the Nazi regime, which had established laws that took away their civil rights and destroyed their livelihood. Stripping them from human and civil rights was the first step that eventually led to the Holocaust, which became the symbol of the moral collapse of the perpetrators of the most brutal war in human history. By 1937, Jews residing in Germany had found conditions unbearable. Not only had many of them been forced out of their jobs and businesses, but racist violence and brutality had become real. Many Jews
From the inspiring film, let us unravel the story behind Holocaust, how it began, who were involved, and how Philippines played a major role in rescuing Jewish refugees. Our first lecturer will discuss the topic on remembering the victims of the Holocaust through a virtual tour in the Yad Vashem Museum.
Our first speaker is currently the desk head of Asia, Africa, and New Zealand Program Section at the International School for Holocaust Studies. He was a lecturer at Haifa University from 2014 to 2018 and served as the academic supervisor at Megalim Olam Higher Education Center. He holds master's degree in European Studies from the Hebrew University in Jerusalem and doctorate degree in sociology and anthropology from Ben-Gurion University in Beersheba, Israel. An author of several journal articles on Holocaust. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our first discussant, Dr. David Deutsch.
Thank you very much, Dr. David Deutsch. In relation to the first topic, our next discussion will focus on the initiative of the Philippines to rescue the Jewish refugees, entitled Drawing Inspiration from the Initiatives of Former President Manuel L. Quezon in Helping Holocaust Victims.
This will be discussed by our next speaker, who is an assistant professorial lecturer of history at the De La Salle University, the most active public historian on Philippine television, and one of the most visible history speakers in social media and cyberspace in the time of the COVID-19 pandemic. Several times, he spoke for the Department of Education and was Speaker of the Embassy of Israel in the Philippines in the HistoCon 2017. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our next discussant, Professor Michael Charleston B. Chu.
Thank you very much, Professor Xiao Chu. Indeed, the history reflects the Philippines' deep commitment to attain a world that adheres to humanity and equality, regardless of race, culture, beliefs, and country.
To further discuss the implications of the Holocaust and the open door policy of the Philippines to today's world, we shall now proceed to the most awaited part of our symposium, the talk show. Joining us as our panelists are DepEd Undersecretary Toncito MC Umali, Esquire, and our speakers, Dr. David Deutsch and Professor Xiao Chua.
And kindly type them in our chat box. Our team will be collating your questions in a while for the panelists to answer. And to lead the facilitation, may we call on the moderator of the talk show, the Project Development Officer from the External Partnerships Service. Let us now turn it over to Mr. Rolly V. Soriano.
Thank you very much, Ma'am Daisy and Sir Jalor. Good afternoon to all the participants and viewers of this important event on commemoration and symposium on the International Holocaust Remembrance Day. At this juncture, may we request to join and open their cameras our panelists, Dr. David Deutsch, Professor Chao Chua, and we will also invite our Undersecretary Toncito Umali and DCM Nir Balsam from the Israel Embassy. We have heard a lot from the presentation of Dr. Deutsch and Professor Chua, but we wanted to learn more about this event in the history. In this segment, our panelists will be talking about the Holocaust in a deeper sense, and we will be asking questions. We will also be asking our virtual participants to ask their questions to our panelists. For our online viewers, we will be asking you to type in your questions on the chat box or at the comment section of the live streaming. Our secretariat will be gathering all your questions, and we will try to accommodate all the questions and ask our panelists. Okay na tayo doon. Parang ano lang, 4 lang na screen yung ano natin. Ma'am Gladys, hindi po ba magjo-join si Sir Nier sa ano po natin?
Sir, tapusin na natin hanggang dulo.
Sir, hindi daw po siya mag-join.
Sige, okay.
Sa mga speaker yung mga questions.
Okay. Andyan ba si Sir, andyan ba si, yung lima natin? Sige. Andyan ba yung lima natin magtatanong ng questions? Okay.
Yes, sir. Nandito kasama natin yung student natin from Quezon City Science High School.
I-try natin na una kong tatawagin si Humphrey. For our live participants, may I call the Division Supreme Student Council President, Humphrey Soriano. Humphrey, good afternoon.
Parang nawala si Humphrey, pero kanina nandito siya eh.
Nawala si Humphrey. Sino yung nandyan?
Wala siya. Kanina nandito. Kami po.
Okay.
Si
Mama Bell. Sige. Thank you, Yusik Tony, Professor Choa, and Dr. Deutz. For another question from our participants, may I call in the Master Teacher 1 of Manuel Rojas High School, Mama Bell Kabuboy. Mama Bell, good afternoon.
Good afternoon po.
Yes, please ask your questions to our panelists.
Yes, good afternoon po, Sir Rolly and all the panelists and all the deputy officials and all the guests. My question is, millions of Jews died in the Holocaust as a result of torture, medical experiments, discrimination, and demonization by the Nazis. What laws were issued by President Manuel L. Quezon that welcomed the refugees and given government assistance? And how did these laws help other potential immigrants in the Philippines?
Yes, thank you, Yusik Tony. Another question from our live participant from Teacher Kenneth Baluyot, Master Teacher 2 of Cruz Naligas High School. Sir Kenneth, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Sir Rolly and our dear panelists. My question is, how does the global community learn from the Holocaust experience, and how will it shape our global perspective of human rights?
Thank you very much, Professor Chua, Yusek Kumali, and Dr. Deutz. Another question from our live participants from Dr. Leo Angeles, Public Schools District Supervisor of SDO Quezon City. Doc Leo, good afternoon. Wala pa si Doc Leo.
Baka nasa ambitious pa.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Professor Chua, Yusek Kumali, and Dr. Deutz. Another question from our live audience in Zoom. Dr. Erlinda Balenya, Education Program Supervisor in Araling Panlipunan. Doc Balenya.
Yes, thank you.
Afternoon, yes po. Please do your question.
Aside from the Yad Vashem Remembrance Center website, what other documentaries and skills can you suggest to teachers to use as reference materials in their classroom, both for the elementary and high school learners? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yusik Tony, Professor Chua, and Dr. Deutz. We have discussed a lot of things about our Holocaust and the lessons we've learned out of this historic event in the past. In the interest of time, we still be gathering all your questions and we will directly answering it via chat or via email. Our secretariat will make sure that all of your questions will be addressed. But for the meantime, may I turn over the floor to our MC, Ma'am Daisy and Sir Jellor. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that fruitful and enlightening talk show. we would like to express our deepest gratitude to our esteemed panelists, DepEd Undersecretary Tunesito MC Umali, Esquire, Dr. David Deutsch, Professor Xiao Chua, and Mr. Rolly V. Soriano for the rich and engaging sharing of thoughts. For the evaluation of today's program, may we invite everyone to click the link pinned by our TWG in the comment section or scan the QR code for your feedback. Thank you.
Friends, everything has to come to an end. As we end today's event, let us treasure this capping moment of our commitment to preserve memory, dignity, and justice. To wrap up today's momentous event, may we call on for his closing remarks the Undersecretary and Chief of Staff of the Department of Education, Attorney Nepomuceno A. Malaluan.
Good afternoon. Humanity is very complex. We are capable of conflict, violence, and destruction. Yet we are also capable of kindness, community, preservation, and justice. Humanity has the faculty for learning and discernment. And today, the Department of Education joins the world in commemorating a dark period in human history, the Holocaust, and remembering those who were killed on account of intolerance and prejudice.